These two guys, they are the love of my life. Dragon caps. This is a book that reminds me so much of How to Train Your Dragon that I'm incredibly excited. Oh, that is a floppy boy. What's up guys, welcome back to another video. My name is Kizzy and today I'm going to be doing my spring TBR. It seems crazy that it's already spring, but if you've seen my previous TBRs for like the last two, I think I've been doing them by season rather by month, just because I feel like it takes a little bit of the pressure off having to commit to this TBR that I might not be in the mood for during that month. You know, a lot can happen in 1 month. So I like doing these kind of slightly smaller TBRs that have a little bit less pressure on them because they're over a larger, about 3-month time span is kind of what it's working out to be. So I'm going to be doing my spring TBR. They're not spring related at all. Sorry if you're looking for spring themed books. These are all fantasy books that are either some of them are being published in the next few months as well, or have just been published actually. And we've got some old time classics in there as well. But I'm very excited for this one. I have high expectations pretty much for all of them, obviously because I wouldn't be reading them if I didn't. But without further ado, let's get into the video and start off with the first book that I'm going to be reading, which I have to read within the next 2 weeks because I'm going to go and see her as an author, do a signing and a book talk. And I'm very excited. I've seen her once before for the previous book to this book. If you haven't guessed already, it is Samantha Shannon's A Day of Fallen Night. So this is the prequel to Priory of the Orange Tree, which is done so well. It's very successful. If you haven't heard of it, I don't know how. It's done very well. I read that when that came out back in 2020. I want to say. It could have been 2019. I did enjoy it. I didn't love it as much as I was hoping to because everyone was hyped up about it. But I did enjoy it enough that I want to continue on or read this one. I believe you can read them both interchangeably. Like you don't have to read the first book before reading the prequel. You can read the prequel first if you do want to start with her newer book before going into it. They are quite hefty, both of them. I remember feeling like the Priory of the Orange Tree maybe would have been better actually as a duology or as a trilogy, like split up a little bit, just because the pacing for me was a little bit off. But she's gone with another massive chunky boy, so we're going to dive in. It's 850 pages, I believe, or thereabout, and I'm excited to get into it. So Priory of the Orange Tree, we kind of got this background story of 1,000 years ago. There was this dragon that kind of came and was very bad. He was a fire-breathing dragon. It's called the Nameless One, you know, going with that trope of Harry Potter of he should not be named. But you know, we move on, it's fine. We've got this Nameless One. It's this dragon that they had to destroy, and the way they kept him at bay was basically making a human sacrifice every day to this dragon. One day the princess of this kingdom is picked to be sacrificed, and a wandering knight who comes past finds this and actually says, you know what, I'll save you if you marry me and turn your whole kingdom to my religion. He does this apparently, and the kingdom is saved and the Nameless One is kind of defeated or destroyed, or at least put to bed. Maybe quite literally. I think he might be actually asleep. There are different parts of this world though that have different takes on this mythology. It's kind of very to do with kind of folklore and Arthurian legend, that kind of how it's manifested over time. I think she's quite heavily inspired by that. So you have over in the East these people who have locked themselves off from the rest of the world because they don't want to get this dragon plague that was caused by the Nameless One. They still love dragons though, but their dragons that they kind of praise as gods are benign. They're water dragons. They're not as evil, or they're not evil like the fire dragons that the Nameless One is from, but they're kind of very isolated from the rest of the world. I believe they have a different origin story, but I can't exactly remember what it is. Then you have the Priory, I think, and something of the Mother, faction of the Mother, some people, and they believe, however, that it wasn't actually the knight that saved them, but actually the queen or the princess who became the queen, who was the one that defeated the Nameless One. So they kind of revere her as the destroyer of this dragon. That happened 1,000 years ago before Priory. This takes place 500 years before Priory, so in between those two events. And I believe it has still something to do with, it's very heavily to do with that kind of legend. So I think we've got from the blurb about three main characters. So we have Tunava, who is a sister of the Priory. She's been trained for 50 years, or training for 50 years to defeat these Wyrms, I'm going to say. These dragons, these fire-breathing dragons. But as they've not been seen in 500 years since the Nameless One was defeated, the kind of younger generation are getting restless. They're wondering what the point of the Priory is and kind of are a little bit on edge about the whole thing. Then we have a queen who has saved her queendom by marrying a foreign king, and that also saves his kingdom, so it's kind of like a little bit of a partnership thing. And then they have a daughter who's also involved, not sure what she's doing. She seems to be just there. Then we have another character who has spent her whole life in the East in a temple trying to raise these sleeping dragons that have been sleeping, I'm assuming, for 500 years. I'm not 100% sure. But she's in the temple trying to raise him. However, then the Dreadmount, which is, I believe, is where the fire-breathing dragons live, or like where they hibernate, erupts. And that causes everyone to go into terror, and these women have to kind of rise to the occasion and overcome the difficulties that come with that. It sounds very kind of similar, I think, in themes to the beginning or to the Priory. I'm not gonna lie, I cannot remember a single thing about Priory of the Orange Tree. I am kind of going into this a little bit blind. The only thing I know is the research I did for this video, which helped a lot actually. So hopefully it's good. I'll be reading it within the next 2 weeks, and I'm probably gonna vlog it actually, because I will be doing the event. Or like going to the event, so I want to film that for you guys. So I'll have my thoughts in that in a video coming up pretty soon actually, so keep an eye out for that if you're interested. Next we have a book that is coming out very soon, well, next month, April 4th I believe, off the top of my head, and I'm so excited for this. I think this is my most excited I've been for a book in a very long time, and it is because it's Brandon Sanderson, of course. So he is releasing the first of the 4 novels, secret projects that he wrote when he was in lockdown to the general public. So you can still, people have already read them because he did a Kickstarter for them that you could pay and get them kind of early with these like premium editions. I could not afford that bad boy, unfortunately. So I have had to wait for them to come out normally. So they come on April 4th, and I will be reading that thing straight away. It is set in the Cosmere world, but I don't believe you have to know much about the Cosmere to go into it, because it was kind of written as a standalone. I could be completely wrong though, so don't quote me on that. But this was written from the point of view of Hoyd, who is a character that comes up in every single book in the Cosmere. He kind of dips in and out. He's a very small character in some books, but also quite a large character in others, or a medium character. For a very small character, he has a lot of impact in things. But he himself is a very whimsical character. He likes telling stories, he likes inventing things, he likes playing tricks on people, he's a bit of a trickster. So I think this book itself is quite whimsical and fairy tale-like, and should have the character's kind of personality woven into it. Brandon Sanderson apparently wrote this as a way, kind of like as a method to get more in his head for when he wrote Dragonsteel. It was kind of just more like an exercise that he did that he then decided to publish. I'm not gonna lie, I don't know anything about this book. So I think the plot is pretty kind of standard. There's not much to the plot, like they haven't given much away. So we have this character called Tress, who's always lived by the sea, and she has this best friend called Charlie, but then his father takes him away from the island that they've lived on to try and find a bride, and disaster strikes, and Tress has to kind of rise to the occasion, or do something, or go on a quest or journey to try and save and stop the disaster. But I'm excited for this. It's meant to be completely different kind of writing style to anything else that Brandon Sanderson has written. I'm very excited to try this one and dive into it and see what he's come up with. The next couple books I'm gonna say on this TBR are ones that I'm very excited to get to, and it's because it's the other one of my all-time favorite authors at the moment. Like, these two guys, they are the love of my life. Brandon Sanderson and Joe Abercrombie. I just am adoring both of them. I've just finished Red Country by Joe Abercrombie, which is the last of the standalones before this trilogy. There is still a short story collection which I'll be reading before, but this is kind of like the main meaty, bulky thing that I want to get into of his. So we have 3 books in this trilogy. It is called the Age of Madness trilogy. It's set 28 years, I believe, after the ending of the original trilogy, and then 15 years after the end of Red Country, which is the last standalone. So we have moved on quite a large chunk from where we left off. We follow the next kind of generation of characters. I did see a small spoiler when I was researching for this video, so I stopped immediately and put it away. So I'm not going to tell you much more, but we are following the children of our main characters and important characters from the previous trilogy, which is super exciting. We're like we've been guessing which children we're going to see in this trilogy, so hopefully it's good. It's kind of, the world's become industrialized, you know, they've discovered coal at the end of the last book. Magic is still a big part, I think, and like nothing is going right, obviously, because it's Joe Abercrombie. The whole kind of aspect of it all being around farmers, that kind of agricultural element has kind of shifted towards industrialization, which will be an interesting movement between the two. Like, you kind of saw it a little bit with Brandon Sanderson's second Mistborn era, as they went from the original trilogy where it's all kind of normal medieval-ish era level of technology to kind of invention of guns and things like that in the next trilogy. So this will have a similar kind of feel, I think. We'll have the world progressed and that impacting how our characters are. So I'm excited to dive into it and have more very dark humour that Joe Abercrombie is great for. I'm excited for this one. That's why I'm putting all 3 of these books in this TBR, because I hope to smash them in the next 3 months. But we'll see. That's very optimistic to get 3 books by the same author done in a short amount of time. I haven't done that in a very long time. I did that last year, but still. Next we have a book which is self-published, and that is The Ascendant by Michael P. Miller. This is a book that reminds me so much of How to Train Your Dragon that I'm incredibly excited. It's basically that, but in book form. So we follow this character called Holt Cook, who is kind of expected just to live the mediocre life. He's meant to be loyal to his master. He's meant to be a good pot washer. That's kind of all he's meant to be there for. However, there are dragons in this world, and when he discovers that dragons are actually quite ruthless, they kill off the weakest dragon of the litter, the new dragon that they born dragon. If he's got any fault to him, if he's going to hinder them, they will just kill him off. So, feeling so bad about this, he actually steals an egg that is going to be like a hindrance, and the dragon is actually blind, as you can see from the cover, and he must raise this dragon. However, things in the world are not going right. Dragon riders are being killed. There is some kind of undead rising of people, and so he has to kind of tap into his ancestral magic to do with the dragons and try and save the world and the people that live in it. It sounds super cool. It has really high rating on Goodreads. It's over 4 stars on Goodreads. About 3,000 people have reviewed it. So not that many, but still that's pretty good. I'm confident that this is going to be a good book. I think there is a second book in the series at the moment. I don't know if it's just going to be a duology or anything more is going to come out of that. But at the moment, it is a 2-book series. Next, we have a book that has also been praised everywhere, and it's slightly smaller, mainly just to break up these bigger, hefty, kind of chunky, meaty books that I have in this TBR, and that is Godkiller. Loads of people have raved about this. I've heard that the second half gets so good, so I'm very excited about this. This follows, I think we've got 2 kind of main characters, or I think maybe 4. I think we have 4 points of views, which for a small book is kind of a big commitment. That's not the right word I'm thinking of, but I can't think of what it is. A big risk, maybe? A risky move, let's say. We follow one girl whose family were killed by some zealots of this god. So she's made it kind of her life mission to kill gods. When she's on her journey, she happens to discover a god that she can't kill, and it is the god of white lies. This god has somehow managed to attach himself to a very young girl who is a lord or a noble or something like that. They, however, are on the run from an assassin, so they kind of team up, I think, and then along their journey they meet this knight who was a big kind of person in this war against these gods. He destroyed all these gods in this war, and now he has to go back to the city that he destroyed and ask a favour from the gods that hate him. I think basically is the plot. Not too sure, but that's the vibe. That's what I'm getting from the blurbs. So it sounds really good. The last half is meant to be phenomenal, so I'm very excited for this, and especially it's only about 300 pages long, which is a nice little break in a fantasy reader's life to find a book 300 pages long. It's going to be a series as well. I don't know how many, but this is not a standalone, so if I like it, I'm going to be waiting a while for the next one. And finally, I have the last book. It is another book that's coming out in the next coming months. This book comes out in May. It is by Mark Lawrence, and it is the book that wouldn't burn. I think this book would burn, but oh, that is a floppy boy. I have not tried any of Mark Lawrence books. I have the Red Sister duology on my shelf, but I have not read them. But I am confident that I'm going to like him, because I don't know why. I just think I will like them. And this sounds like such a cool story. It's about a boy who's always lived in a library, I believe. I'm just going to read you the blurb because the blurb's not very long. And it sounds a little bit, it's a little bit wishy-washy. I don't really know what the whole plot is, so I don't know how to explain it without reading you the blurb. So, here we go. I don't have my glasses on as well, which is why I have to have the computer this close to me. Don't judge me for my blindness. So, a boy has lived his whole life trapped within a vast library older than empires and larger than cities. A girl has spent hers in a tiny settlement out on the dust where nightmares stalk and no one goes. The world has never even noticed them. That's about to change. Their stories spiral around each other across worlds and time. This is a tale of truth and lies and hearts and the blurring of one into another. A journey on which knowledge erodes certainty and on which, though the pen may be mightier than the sword, blood will split and cities burned. So we've got 2 characters that are isolated. They come together at some point, potentially, not even 100% sure. They might not even physically meet. It could just all be through books. I don't know, that would be kind of cool. No idea anything about that apart from that. So it doesn't sound like anything else that Mark Lawrence has written. Like, from the look of his other books, they seem kind of like your typical kind of war fighting. Like, she looks like an angry kind of dude. It's a very different vibe from the cover of this new book coming out than what we're getting. So who knows actually what we're getting from Mark. But I'm excited to find out. Who doesn't like a library, eh? The Starless Sea is one of my favourite books, and obviously that is set in a library, or kind of a library. It's not really, but it has a library-esque element to it. It's giving me Starless Sea kind of idea vibes. We'll find out whether that's the case, because I'm not gonna lie, as I said from that blurb, I have no idea what this book is actually about. So that's it. That's all I have on my TBR, on my reading agenda for spring. Hopefully I can stick to this one actually, because I haven't managed to stick to any other one. But I have goals to read much more than I have the last 2 months. I've been in a little bit of a new year reading slump, which I tend to do, which is so annoying, but I'm committed to not letting it continue and actually focusing on making reading it more of a priority again in the next few weeks. So hopefully I can stick to that. If you enjoyed this video, please do like and subscribe. It does help my channel phenomenal amounts, and I will see you in the next video next Sunday.